What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for June 14th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a feel-good Friday edition. Going to be a hot one, but it is summer, so we will take it. Speaking of summer, we are officially heading into the dog days of summer. The NBA Finals should be wrapping up this weekend, as well as the Stanley Cup Finals. And with that, all we have is Phillies baseball until Eagles training camp, but I got you covered. It is the ultimate Philly sports nickname tournament. That is kicking off Monday, June 24th. We'll have 2 matchups a day, 4 regions, 64 nicknames. You choose the winner, 2 matchups a day, and we will crown the ultimate Philly sports nickname as voted by you, the listeners of this day in Philly sports history. We're only 1 week away from the Selection Friday show, where I'll unveil the brackets and you are able to rip me all weekend to just tell me what I got wrong and what I need to do better. But that is what happens in the NCAA tournament with the selection committee anyway. That is all coming to you. Next Friday is the selection show, and then the tournament kicks off June 24th. You decide the ultimate Philly sports nickname. All right, let's start with a recap of yesterday's question of the day. And not as much participation. Maybe this is part of the issue, and Major League Baseball doesn't do a good job promoting the interleague, or maybe it's just so ingrained now that it's just like whatever. But 55% of you said the Orioles should be the Phillies American League rival. Probably won't happen because of their natural geographic distance between them and the Nationals in D.C. So I guess for now, we'll still be with the Red Sox and the Blue Jays alternating. But thank you, as always, for participating in the question of the day. There'll be another one later in the show. And honestly, I do think that's something that maybe Major League Baseball doesn't want to or doesn't need to at this point. Because if you look at like the NBA, NHL, and even the NFL when they play teams in the AFC, it's not really like, hey, see these. I guess it was different when the schedules were more imbalanced. Now it's just a part of the thing. I still kind of get excited because I have that old school mentality when the Phillies play American League teams. But maybe it's just one of those things. I think they should try to promote it and get those rivalries and get some hype around it. But I guess that's what they're trying to do with London and things like that. Couple quick housekeeping notes. You follow me on social media, Jimbo_Mon on Twitter and TikTok. At Philly Jimbo on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jimbo_Mon. That is probably the best way to stay in the loop, because when the selection show does get posted, it's going to be right underneath the This Day in Philly Sports History channel. So stay tuned for that coming next Friday. It'll post at midnight, so you will be able to watch it first thing in the morning, or if you're a night owl, you'll be able to watch it then. But tell your friends. Let's help spread this thing. Leave comments. Leave reviews on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever you need to do. Let's grow this thing. I am beyond excited for this nickname tournament. One thing that did come up the other night in the Phillies game, and it always bugs me when people use this, and it's the whole unanswered runs or unanswered points. You see it a lot in the NFL. They scored 21 unanswered points before they got on the board. Well, they scored 21, but then they answered the points. So are the 21 points unanswered? It was the Phillies when they they were up 4-0, and then the Red Sox came in. They were like, they've scored 6 unanswered runs, but then the Phillies scored a run. So was it unanswered, or did they answer? They just didn't answer the whole total. Kind of one of those chicken and egg things, I guess. But just one of those things that sports announcers say all the time that I never understood. And like I said, you see it a lot in basketball when teams go on a run, and then in the NFL. And it's like, well, is it unanswered? They scored 10 unanswered points. Well, they were up 10-0, and then the Eagles scored a touchdown. So didn't they technically answer the 10 points? Just one of those things, and giving you something to think about here on a Friday. And these giving you a peek behind the curtain of my mind. Those are the things I think about. And it drives me crazy. Not sure why. And anybody else? Or is this just me? Anyway, speaking of the Phillies, very, very shitty game. The second straight clunker. And it was very disappointing because it was a beautiful night out. The kids were at my parents'. It was like, I'll sit on the back porch, do some podcast prep, sit down, relax, and the Phils were already down 4-0. And it just was like, ugh. It seems to happen to me a lot like that, so maybe I should just not relax. But 9-3, they lost. Nola was just not good. They couldn't really hit. And it just, they didn't have their best lineup because of injury and giving guys rest, but brutal series in Boston. Possibly you can chalk some of that up to just coming off the London series. I don't know if they'll use that as an excuse, but 2-game losing streak, it happens. It's a long season. They're not going to win every game, but they just, the pitching has not been good the past 2 games. And I think John Kruk was saying a lot on the broadcast last night that he's not used to seeing Aaron Nola pitch like that. So I don't know if it was trying to press too hard. The regular normal routines were all messed up from being in London. But we'll see what happens as they head down to Baltimore. The Baltimore Orioles are red hot right now. They beat the Braves 2 out of 3. Should be a good series, possible World Series preview. The World Series preview that I picked back in our Phillies preview. We'll see how the Phillies stack up. The Orioles are a good team. They certainly need to play better than they did last night. They could have some help on the way, though. Brandon Marsh was in Reading. By last count, he had 2 hits. So he appears to be ramping up, possibly coming in tomorrow. Trey Turner is starting to get ramped up. He should be returning this weekend. So they should have some semblance of a more complete team as they take the field down in Camden Yards, which, by the way, if you're going, enjoy the stadium. The stadium is awesome. There's a lot of cool little bars around the stadium. We went down a couple of years ago, but one of the best stadiums I've been to, more fun. And it's interesting, too. And if you happen to be taking because I've been to Fenway too, if you happen to be in Fenway this week and then you're hitting Baltimore on your way home, interesting to compare the two because Boston is one of the old school stadiums where it's not as open, where Baltimore was one of the first ones to really embrace that. And then you compare that to Citizens Bank Park, and Baltimore seems more closed in than what Citizens Bank Park is, but it's interesting to compare Fenway, Camden Yards, and Citizens Bank Park. So, and again, these are the things I think about. I'm just saying that's what I need to think about. Expecting a good crowd for Phillies in Baltimore. There was a lot of Phillies fans up there. It's just a shame that the team just did not cooperate. But back at it tonight against a tough Baltimore Orioles team, and lots of trade talks and rumors and everything starting to ramp up. I'm not ready to really start making projections and things like that. We still have 6 weeks to go before the trade deadline. But I have seen a lot of people and heard a lot of people talking, and it seems like there's a divide right now. And in Philly, we tend to overvalue a lot of our players and think they're better. Think Ben Simmons when we were like, can't include Ben Simmons in a trade. Think Dominic Brown from back in the Ruben Amaro days. Can't trade Dominic Brown. And we held on to those guys a little too long before we could really maximize. So I think with the way the pitching staff has been this year, the bullpen starters, and the fact that you have a chance to get the Braves while they're down, I would go all in. And if that means trading some of these guys that we quote-unquote think are going to be stars, prospects are just that. They're prospects. If you can get a sure-thing major leaguer and win the World Series, it is well worth it. I know everybody was upset at the end of the 07 to 011, or 011. 07 to 11 era Phillies, the way they went into the tank because they didn't have any farm system. Say what you want about Ruben Amaro. He went for it, and they did get a World Series, so that helped ease it. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, you can't mortgage the future, and that's fine, but I saw a quote years ago, and it really still hits true today. Anybody who's ever bought a house has technically mortgaged their future. So you have a house to stay in. If we can get players that are going to help us win the World Series and be more solid, like maybe like a power hitter, sign me up. And if it means trading away a prospect or two, I am okay with it. You have finite windows. And in Philly, like I said, we've tended to overvalue our guys and want to hold on to them a little bit longer than what we should have. And Ben Simmons and Dominic Brown are the two prime examples of that. So I say if the deal is there, take it. I don't think you need to panic yet. There's been a lot of talk about possibly moving Bryce back to the outfield if you can find a first baseman. I think there's a lot of variables and everything in play. So I think you need to see how the next few weeks shake out before you start making any rash moves. However, with that being said, if it does mean taking a guy that is in the starting lineup now and putting him on the bench or trading him, if it's going to make the team better, sign me up. All right, Philly Goat. We talked yesterday about the Joe Carter Ruined My Childhood shirt, one of my favorite shirts they have, and there was a ton of talk in the London series about the Britain Blue, a 13-colony lead. The shirts are amazing, and then you can get some canvas loafers to match. I cannot stress enough how comfortable these shoes are. Just go check them out. They're not expensive either. For what you would pay at a shoe store, they're right in line, and they look better, and they're more comfortable than Hey Dudes. I keep saying this, but they're more comfortable than Hey Dudes, and everybody's like, oh, Hey Dudes are so comfortable. Philly Goat canvas loafers, much more comfortable. So go check it out. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, some Eagles news, and I guess there's a couple big stories, I should say. I'll save the bigger one for second. But the first story is they did not receive a penalty for tampering in the Saquon Barkley case due to lack of evidence, and essentially basically saying, James Franklin, you're an idiot. So it's basically James Franklin being James Franklin and not knowing what he's talking about, kind of like what he does in big games against Michigan and Ohio State. Sorry, Penn State fans, but tell me I'm wrong. And really just not understanding or fully listening to what Saquon was telling him. So no penalty for the Eagles for that. So we can kind of put that behind us, move on, and get ready for training camp. But the big story, Merrill Reese. Yes, Merrill Reese, our beloved radio announcer, is the 2024 Pete Rozelle Radio-Television Award winner and will be honored at the Hall of Fame, essentially saying Merrill Reese is a Hall of Famer. The NFL, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, recognizing what we already knew here in Philly, that Merrill is a Hall of Fame broadcaster. This award is similar to the Ford C. Frick Award that Harry Callis won, and it's probably one of the highest honors you can get as a broadcaster. Merrill Reese is entering his 48th year as a Philly or as an Eagles broadcaster. One of the best, Philly native, Temple graduate. Hits close to my heart with that. I didn't realize this. He started off as the color analyst on the Eagles broadcast before moving to play-by-play. And if you are of a certain age, you know, believe it or not, there were times that Eagles games would get blacked out due to not selling out the stadium. It was just a weird rule that the NFL, I don't even know, they might still have it. It's hard to imagine the NFL, especially the Eagles in Philadelphia in the late 80s, early 90s, not selling out, or even into the mid-90s, I guess. But it did happen. I was talking with some people last night, and I didn't realize this because I believe I was in Maryland watching this game, so it didn't get blacked out for me. But the infamous Ricky Waters for what game was actually blacked out on TV. Excuse me. But I bring that up because there were times where the only way to get Eagles was to listen to the radio on Merrill Reese, and there's still some people today that will sync their TV up with Merrill in the background and listen to it on the radio and have Merrill and Mike in the background. I remember, like I said, games that were blacked out. We used to play, sometimes we would play football on Sundays during Eagles games when they were blacked out, and you'd have your portable little boom box. You turn it to 94 WI, or it was YSP at the time, and listen to Merle, and at the time Stan Walters. No knock against Mike Quick, but Stan Walters was the best. 100% love listening to him and Merle do the games. But shout out to Merle. Big congratulations to him for being the 2024 Pete Rozelle Radio-Television Award winner and being honored at Hall of Fame weekend. I think it's the weekend this year, and truly getting a well-deserved, and honestly, I feel like to borrow a line from LeBron James, it's about damn time. And finally, Jordan Davis, and I don't know if he said this before or this is a new quote, but I stumbled upon this. They were talking about the importance of Fletcher Cox, and he was like, yeah, Fletcher's my guy. I talk to him still all the time, but he's not here anymore. He's not coming in to save us. Nobody's coming in to save us. We need to do it. We need to step up as youngsters and young players. And it came across to me more like he had a chip on his shoulder. And they all seem to be talking like that. I like it. They like what Vic Fangio is bringing to the table. I'm looking for them, like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, to really have breakout years this year. But I like him saying that nobody's coming in to save us. We need to do it. And with everybody kind of saying, questioning them, I like the chip on the shoulder. All right, from being happy to this guy just won't go away. Doc Rivers. First of all, shut up. Nobody, he was on a podcast and was saying how most teams, it's nice to play at home. You get kind of an edge, but a tough place to play at home was in Philly because of the crowd. Usually you play better, but I think the crowd affected our players. Well, Doc, maybe it's you. Maybe it's your coaching. The team the year before you came in, they were 31-4 at home. Is that on the players and the crowd, or is that you? This guy, I've never seen anybody milk being the head coach and having Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce basically win you a championship, and he's lived his entire career on that. And you're a terrible coach. They won in spite of you, or I should say despite you. And it just, shut up. Like, seriously, shut up. Look what you did. You ruined the Bucs this year. And to blame the crowd, Doc Rivers has never taken accountability for anything that the entire time he was here in Philly, and I didn't really follow him that closely in LA or in Boston other than when the Sixers played the Celtics, but you're not good. You take accountability. Maybe it's you. Don't blame the crowd, because truthfully, the crowd during the Ben Simmons time, they were so supportive of Ben. We just talked about nobody ever wanted to trade him because we fell for the stupid Instagram videos every time. So it's you, Doc. You are the problem. Not the crowd, not anybody else, not the culture, the stench, whatever. It's you. Doc Rivers, you are the problem. I can't believe I'm spending time here in June talking about Doc Rivers, who isn't even our coach anymore. It's ridiculous. I did mention the NBA Finals should wrap up this weekend. Boston with a commanding 3-0 lead. And just since Doc has us all pissed off, let's take a look at this. And Drew Holiday is going to win another championship. He was the first domino to fall of the process era. The Sixers could have drafted Kristaps Porzingis, but instead we took Jahlil Okafor. Famously, we know we could have had Jaylen Brown, but we took Ben Simmons despite all the red flags. And then the whole Markelle Fultz and Jason Tatum thing. Maybe it is not the players. Maybe it's not Joe. Maybe it's the front office. But that leads to today's question of the day. Who is more to blame for the Sixers' lack of success? Everybody likes to blame Joe because of the injuries and how he plays in the finals. But I just gave you, well, Drew Holiday, again, that was a previous regime, and that was probably the right move at the time. Could have had Porzingis, could have had Jaylen Brown, could have had Jason Tatum, but instead we ended up with Jahlil Okafor, Ben Simmons, and Markelle Fultz. So my question to you, is it more the front office or is it more on Joe? Let me know. 267-495-8531. Send a text message, send a voicemail. Get your thoughts. Anything else? You want to go on a Doc rant? Get it out. You want to go wax poetic on Merrill? Get it out. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line, 267-495-8531. That gets you in. You can hit me up on social media. But let me know, who is more to blame for the Sixers' lack of success? Is it Joel or is it the front office? I'm going front office. And I mean, I just gave you 4, but really 3 solid examples of why the front office has screwed them. 5 if you count hiring Doc Rivers as the coach. Shut up, Doc. Be sure to check out my boys on the Clashing Conferences podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. They are wrapping up the NBA season as the finals come to a close. I keep seeing and getting previews. I haven't heard for sure, but they will be, I think, making a move to MLB, which should be fun. So be sure to check them out wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. No Mishkov update for the Flyers. However, it did come out yesterday that Sean Couturier had surgery for a sports hernia. He's getting back in. He should be good to go for the season. If you remember, Donovan McNabb had that, and they had to essentially put like a mesh screen in his stomach to let it heal, which sounds pretty painful. But he should be back and ready to go for training camp. All right, today we're going to go back to 1987. On this day in 1987, the Phillies beat the Expos 11-6 up in Olympic Stadium. Von Hayes and Darren Daulton both homered in this game. Don Carmen got the win, going 7 2/3 innings. But the star of the game was the Expo killer himself, Mike Schmidt. He went 3 for 4 with 3 home runs and 6 RBI. Now, these were it was a pretty milestone type day for Schmidt too. The homers gave him 511 for his career, which tied Mell Ott for 13th on the all-time list. His second homer was also his 2,000th career hit. He became the 153rd player in Major League Baseball history to hit 2,000 home runs would be a lot. 2,000 hits. It was also his 25th home run at Olympic Stadium, the most of any visitor. He ended his career with 26 homers at Olympic Stadium. Probably the most of all time. I could not find, and usually stats, it's very easy to just, it might take some time, but usually you do some Google searches and you're able to find. It's not able to find the official stats for Olympic Stadium, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Mike Schmidt's 26 home runs were the most by a visiting player in Olympic Stadium history, just because he always seemed to kill the Expos. But on this day in 1987, Mike Schmidt hit 3 home runs in an 11-6 win over the Expos. Number 509, 510, and 511, tying him for 13th with Mell Ott, and then also getting his 2,000th career hit in the process, while also setting the record for most home runs hit in Olympic Stadium. So it was a good day for Schmidt, good day for the Phillies, and that 1987 team, though, was just, they weren't great, they weren't bad, they were just sort of, But let's continue our trip down Phillies Memory Lane. And today's spotlight is Ben Francisco, outfielder. He was a 5th-round draft pick in 2002 of Cleveland and was traded to the Phillies along with Cliff Lee in 2009. Kind of played mostly on the bench and as a reserve. Played for 3 years in Philly, hit .259, 17 homers, 75 RBI, 32 doubles. Again, mostly as a reserve bench player. He did have a chance to start in 2011 and then quickly went back to the bench. He was the guy that was supposed to replace Jason Worth, and it just never came to fruition. Probably the highlight and high point of his, and I distinctly remember this game, but the highlight of his Phillies career was probably Game 3 of the 2011 NLDS when he hit the game-winning homer against the Cardinals. He was quickly then traded that offseason to Blue Jays. But today's Phillies Memory Lane spotlight is Ben Francisco, outfielder, who's kind of the forgotten guy in the original Cliff Lee trade. Spent 3 years here, won Game 3 of the NLDS in 2011 with a homer. Not necessarily known for his power, but I remember him pinch running a lot as well, if I think back. But that is today's Phillies Memory Lane spotlight. On this day in 1987, Phils beat the Expos 11-6. Mike Schmidt hitting 3 home runs, tying him with Mell Ott for 13th on the all-time list, and then also getting his 2000th hit to boot. Be sure to let me know on the Back to the Future voice and text line who's more to blame for the Sixers' lack of success. Is it the front office or is it Joel? I think Joel is the easy target. I don't feel he's the correct target, though. But let me know. Maybe I'm just drinking the processed Kool-Aid or whatever you want to call it. But 267-495-8531 get you in on that. Congratulations to Merrill Reese. Share your Merrill Reese memories if you want. Like I said, there's just so many of them to choose, whether it's a field goal, touchdown, you name it. Merrill is the GOAT. So kudos to him for finally getting his due and being not necessarily inducted into the Hall of Fame, but going to the Hall of Fame as a broadcaster, heading into his 48th year. That is impressive. It's going to be a hot one. Stay hydrated, but enjoy your Friday. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for June 14th, 2024. I'm Jim Montgomery, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.